In our last part, we saw that Thanos had reached a point where not only could he will away half the universe's population with a snap of his fingers, but he could devastate the cosmos simply by losing his temper. It's not just that he's killed countless multitudes. His mere possession of this power makes him an ongoing threat. The seed of resistance has been planted in the home of Doctor Strange, where his defender's ally, the Silver Surfer, arrived with a warning of Thanos' power, drawing in Doctor Doom and Strange being sought out by the resurrected Adam Warlock. Everyone else is only seeing a tiny sliver of the overall situation. Case in point, in the pages of Quasar 26, her, that is, the being created by the same ones who created Warlock, is still interested in pursuing the agenda we saw way back in Marvel 2 and 1, of mating with the perfect male in order to create flawless progeny. She returned after being gone for the majority of the 80s in the pages of Alpha Flight, and now that she has returned to Earth, she seeks out the Silver Surfer. It's open to interpretation whether or not she means to mate with the Surfer, but it's pointless because he's only interested in fighting Thanos, and if she is not interested in joining that fight, he's no time for her. I've forgotten how hard it is when someone's name is a pronoun. In Quasar 27, she has followed what she'd sensed on the Surfer back to Doctor Strange's home, and finally, her comes face to face with Adam Warlock himself. He is perplexed that she's wearing a costume similar to the one that he wore on Counter-Earth, but he has little patience for her right now, and when she says what she wants from him, he leaves. He's more inclined to try to ensure there is a future by defeating Thanos and thinking about siring a new race for one that won't actually exist. Also in this issue is the birth of Epic from the remains of Eon, Epic quickly slipping into their parents' place in this contest, as we saw last time. Other events happen in Quasar, but we'll hold them back for right now. Her is not the only one with romantic problems, as seen in Doctor Strange 32. In the midst of the discussion with the Surfer, Warlock, and Doctor Doom, Strange's mind keeps drifting back to Clea, awakening from the Morpheus spell, and gives Strange the business over that before stomping off. Then the Silver Surfer crashed through his window, and his personal problems were forgotten. Well, now if there's a lull, he's concerned that he doesn't even know if Clea was taken by the snap. Warlock says he's no time to go looking, and Strange concedes the point that being Sorcerer Supreme has to trump his marriage. So Rintrah and Pip head out instead, in disguise naturally, but there's trouble when the Silver Dagger, one of Strange's old enemies, appears with a well-armed entourage trying to convince a mob that it's Doctor Strange and his black magic that's behind this. This is to draw Strange out, as the two have history, a complicated history that involves eyeballs being passed around, werewolves, not the last time werewolves will come up in this video, and the two different eyes of Agamotto, one of which is with Strange currently, and one that he had used previously, which has now been embedded in the socket behind Silver Dagger's eye patch. They battle with the eyes, and during the fight a dagger would have killed Strange if Clea hadn't arrived to deal with it. Strange wins, and just as Agamotto, in the form of a caterpillar of course, shows up to take Silver Dagger away. This allows Strange and Clea to kiss and make up, and then return to the matter of stopping the Mad God before he pulls something else horrible. We continue then in Silver Surfer 52, which picks up the events with Drax and Firelord on Titan. First, Mentor had vanished, remember, during the snap, and then Eros disappeared when he was summoned by Thanos. So there is tension between the two of them as they try to piece things together, and they watch footage thanks to Isaac to try to fit together all of the little bits. But what Drax's twisted mind sees is Firelord is the enemy behind all of this, and attacks him. He finally gets his head together thanks to a little kid he puts in mortal peril, and laments that his brain doesn't work right anymore. In the end, though, they answer the summons to come to Earth and join the heroes. All in all, it's a demonstration that while we have a front row seat for things, this is a universal issue and everyone is reacting, often with no knowledge of what's happening. Case in point, the next issue of Silver Surfer, number 53, also shows what's happening in the Kree homeworld. As mentioned in the pages of the Silver Surfer, the loss of the Skrull's shape-changing ability was seen as a weakness that the Kree were prepared to exploit, which caused the Kree-Skrull War. and the Silver Surfer being pulled in repeatedly until he was forced to finally pick a side in the conflict. This was during the days when Steve Englehart wrote the book, and as discussed in our own tie-in videos, changes were taking place across the line as Jim Shooter was pushed out the door and Tom DeFalco was elevated to his position, with Mark Gruenwald as his assistant. Jim Shooter's period is racked with controversy, but during his period, Marvel made some brave creative choices, like we've already discussed, killing off Captain Marvel by cancer, freeing the Silver Surfer from his imprisonment on Earth, shaking up the roster of the Fantastic Four, Monica Rambeau evolving to become leader of the Avengers, not to mention things like reinventing She-Hulk into her own character, marrying Spider-Man and Mary Jane, and the mega crossover Secret Wars. The fall of Shooter led to DeFalco and Gruenwald wanting to pull things back towards a certain normal. To borrow from our previous discussion of chaos theory and strange attractors, the characters should be like a ping-pong ball in a roiling ocean as far as they're concerned. Whether plunged underwater or tossed into the air, it will always be drawn back by either gravity or buoyancy to its natural position. So while things such as DeFalco's own book, having Thor be replaced by Eric Masterson, can happen as a temporary shake-up, things should always drift back towards the norm. As established, this led to some frustration for Steve Englehart, who found his plans ruined, and protested by repeatedly screwing with him on his way out the door. We've already discussed what he did on Fantastic Four, but on the Silver Surfer, he decided to illustrate his view of the situation more directly. The previous minor character Clumsy Foul-Up, a fat, stupid, cowardly member of Reptile's pirate gang, returned and, thanks to machinations by one of the elders, literally stabbed Reptile in the back, and continued his backstabbing until the situation allowed him to become supreme leader of the entire Kree Empire, a commentary on Tom DeFalco's rise to the top in his view. Well, funny as that is, Gruenwald, Bob Harris of the X-Books at the time, and Fabian Nicienza of various works, most notably being the co-creator of Deadpool and really responsible for planting the seeds of all that made him beloved, those three were working on a major crossover event planned for the Avengers, a war this time between the Kree and the Shi'ar. It would be given the absurd name Operation Galactic Storm, after the Operation Desert Storm that was on everyone's mind in the wake of the Gulf War. Naturally, their story would not be helped by having Clumsy Foul-Up leading the Kree. This issue would help to resolve that problem. In Silver Surfer 53, we see that Clumsy Foul-Up's idiocy and greed has crippled the Kree to the point that the impossible is happening. The Pinks and the Blues are putting aside their differences and uniting in common political cause. The loss of half their population, the belief this is the work of the Skrulls in anticipation of a new war, and Foul-Up's only concern being how he can personally profit off this, convinces them to arrange for an imposter Silver Surfer to assassinate him, for the two representatives of the Blues and the Pinks to then eliminate the imposter, and those two then taking over to run the Empire of the Kree together. Things aren't back to normal, as the Intelligence Supreme is still a drooling mess, but they're normal enough for the purposes of Operation Galactic Storm. With that, let's return to the core book with Infinity Gauntlet 3. He has further revised the shrine and used a collection of planets to spell out his name as an act of cosmic art, he says. He has no concern for the inhabitants of those worlds, so he obviously has no reason to concern himself with the consequences of his actions on Earth. Where as bad as all those disasters were in Issue 2, there's even worse news. It knocked the Earth from its orbit, and it will enter an eternal ice age. The Surfer and Doom want to take action now, but Warlock warns that it's premature, but will satisfy their desire for action by traveling to Avengers HQ. After confusing introduction with a master villain and a dead man joining Strange and the Surfer, Warlock says they need to raise an army. Iron Man, Spider-Man, Namor, Drax, Firelord, Vision, Scarlet Witch, Cloak, Nova, Cyclops, Wolverine, they all answer the call. Except the Hulk. There's still bad blood there. Last time he worked with the Avengers, after all, was during the Evolutionary War, and he was dropped in the Nevada desert, and no one even bothered to come and check and see if he was okay. Okay, well, technically he did appear during Atlantis attacks, but it was one small part of one single issue in a massive crossover event. Essentially, he's bothered by the way they treat him, that they only want to tap his strength when they absolutely need to, and the rest of the time, they don't want to have anything to do with him. In fact, sometimes they actively hunt him. They're practically the definition of fair-weather friends as far as he's concerned. But Captain America says that with this new persona of his and his clear desire to be something else, he can have a greater role with the Avengers in the future, and the Hulk decides he'll go along with it for now. That drama over with, Doom tries to drop a little bit more of his own in there by asserting that only his wisdom is capable of leading them during this, but no one is buying what he is selling. And when Warlock and Surfer departs, Warlock leaves Captain America in charge and no one else argues with that. The destination is where Quasar finds himself with Epic, and their arrival triggers a cosmic summit. It consists of the biggest of the big league: the Watcher, Lord Chaos and Master Order, Galactus, the Stranger, Love and Hate, Kronos, the Celestials, Eternity, and the Living Tribunal. The last two were unexpected, but there's a reason for their presence. Eternity is the embodiment of what Thanos is seeking to usurp, and he wants the Living Tribunal to recognize this crime and put a stop to it. But the Living Tribunal is not persuaded. If Thanos replaces Eternity, all he is doing is replacing an existing will with his own. That he would be a monster is not a factor in that. So the Living Tribunal chooses to sit this out. Eternity then leaves as well, and when Warlock begins to discuss his plan, Galactus takes umbrage, and when his insult is met in kind, tries to vaporize Warlock. Warlock is fine, though, his point made. Raw power can solve some problems, but not all of them. Only a careful strategy will win in this case. Lord Chaos and Master Order, who, remember, saw firsthand how Warlock escaped destiny and now exists outside of it, sides with him. One by one, the other cosmic beings fall in behind Warlock, until a fuming Galactus is the only one left and forced to either join Warlock's coalition or go it alone. And he knows already that Thanos' power exceeds his own. There is, however, one possible ally few have considered in the war to come against Thanos, as Vision reveals to She-Hulk. The victories of the Avengers the last two times they faced him were due to Thanos leaving them with a means to thwart him. In other words, their only real chance of beating Thanos is if Thanos helps them. But his grin at the presence of the Watcher, whose presence in the coming conflict will be only to observe, shows that he is looking forward to the futile attempt to topple a god. Warlock, the Surfer, and Quasar arrive at Avengers HQ just after a squabble between Iron Man and Doom, preparing for that battle, while on the roof, the Hulk and Wolverine are chilling together. They've tangled lots of times, but in the face of this, they seem to make their peace with it. Which is good because Warlock has special instructions for them. If there is an opening, kill Thanos. These two are the only ones who wouldn't hesitate to do it. The fusion of Joe Fixit's attitude and Bruce Banner's logic would make an execution in order to save the universe an easy choice. And Wolverine has to hold him back from taking a life sometimes. No problem there. Doom would as well, but as Warlock notes, he's untrustworthy. You don't want him killing Thanos and taking up the Gauntlet himself. As for Thanos, he is again spurred by Mistress Death, who resents his power, even if he professes his love and showers her with gifts. Thus Thanos, again enraged at her spurning, delivers her the ultimate insult. He creates Taraxia, a perfect lover for him. The insult is not that she would take Death's place. Oh no. It's Thanos that yearns for that relationship far more, after all. No, the insult is... Well, remember when Thanos needed a minion to thwart the Silver Surfer on his way to Earth? He took a primitive being and transformed it into a monster, granting it a bit of his infinite power to be able to face down the Surfer. Why is that relevant? Because Thanos used existing life to do so. He twisted life for his own ends. But here with Taraxia, he didn't twist some other being into becoming his perfect lover. He called her into existence. Thanos has insulted death by creating life. It may be hard to grasp the magnitude of that. It's just one life. But to ask again, if he slapped her, just one big wallop right across the face, would we say, it's just one? She is everything you are not, he goads Mistress Death, and indeed that is true, for she is alive. It is apparent, even as Taraxia showers her affection upon him, that he is unhappy that Death is not more upset about this. I have to also confess, I have a soft spot for Taraxia. She is fully devoted to Thanos. It is fundamental to her being. And yet to her creator, the one who made her that way, the totality of her existence is to be an act of spite. It's rather like that meme, you pass butter for the robot. If she were to ever realize her existence is literally just an insult, imagine what that would do to her. I can't help but think there is such untapped potential in such a character. Well, the big moment is here. Doctor Strange has given everyone who needs it a 1-hour spell to be able to survive in space, and will transport them to and from the battlefield. However, despite the image on the cover, Warlock and the Silver Surfer aren't with them. They'll be elsewhere. The Avengers and their allies are not the hope for victory. They are only a diversion, a sacrifice in the vain hope that their deaths will allow the real plan to defeat Thanos. They arrive around or on the shrine, ready for the battle as the issue closes. Silver Surfer 54 occurs during this issue, as the discussion around persuading the Hulk to join is made, and the Silver Surfer is distraught over how Thanos played him, even making him lament seemingly taking the Titan's life, that he felt guilty over doing so, only to now wish that he actually had, to spare the universe from what he's inflicting upon it. The Surfer heads out to clear his head, going to Central Park, where during his efforts to help clean up after the disaster of Thanos' tantrum, he begins encountering animals escaped from the zoo. Only not escaped, freed, by the Rhino, who believes the end of the world is here and no creature deserves to meet their end in a cage. The Surfer points out that's not exactly a safe situation, and that there is hope to thwart Thanos, but the Rhino attacks him when he says they should round up the animals and put them back. After a bit of knocking around, the Surfer finally runs out of patience and has the Rhino dead to rights when they hear a gunshot. A cop shot one of the escaped tigers and the Rhino's outraged, but the Surfer holds him back, pointing out that when he said the situation wasn't safe, he meant for the animals too. Besides being shot, there's also the chance they might attack each other. He heals the tiger while the Rhino says that putting them in cages to be gawked at is wrong, and the Surfer admits that he's doing it because it's all he can do. He doesn't approve, but the situation is untenable. It's a reminder of the lessons that Warlock shared with Galactus. Incredible power can do many things, but not give wisdom or answers. As I said regarding Dynamo City, the Surfer was thwarted by the realization that for all his power, there was no course of action that would actually solve anything. His power can destroy or heal, but it can't simply wave away problems. It's his words that gets the Rhino to at least calm down, recognize the situation, and for the two to depart in peace. The raw power that the Hulk says is about to be unleashed when the Surfer returns is unlikely to do any better in the coming confrontation. This is perhaps a sharp reminder, as Warlock holds Surfer back from engaging Thanos, that his power cosmic can't hope to stop Thanos directly. The battle then is seen from the POV of Pip the Troll in Doctor Strange number 33, as Strange is in a trance after having sent all the heroes through. Thanos is prepared to freeze them all in a moment of time, but senses the connection to Doctor Strange and doesn't want him to pull something with the frozen heroes. So he claps his hands once, causing a maelstrom to grab hold of Strange and pull him, along with Clea, who tries to rescue him, and hurtle them towards the dawn of time. Together they're able to latch on to a passing era, and it's because it's when the Library of Alexandria was being burned. Well, who watches them pass over but someone from way back? Zoda of Pergamum, who was previously seen once, 26 years earlier, in Strange Tales, so early that Doctor Strange's 14th appearance was facing Zoda, and when he was just a backup story for our Human Torch book. It is amazing when you go down the rabbit hole of the early Marvel Universe what you find. It involved Cleopatra, so when Doctor Strange mentioned this becoming hers, I have a sense of who he means. And sure enough, he finds Cleopatra with Caesar, but she doesn't recognize him because that encounter is in her future. Seems there's fighting because Caesar's attempting to put Cleopatra on the throne, while Zoda is trying to put her brother Ptolemy there. But this makes Strange realize that it's not the library burning, just a warehouse which happens to have books in it. The real library is intact, where there's a scroll that's he latched onto. That's when they cross Zoda, who traps Clea within a mirror and threatens to destroy it, and thus her, if Strange will not give him that scroll, the scroll of the Vishanti. Strange does, but only because he knows that it is warded to keep it out of Zoda's hands, and catching it releases a spell that knocks him out cold, allowing Strange to free Clea and for them to use the scroll to return to their proper time, thanks to an anchor, and that anchor needs a quick explanation too. In our tie-in, we talked about how in Nothing Lasts Forever, at the Avengers collapsed, their membership whittled down to just 4, She-Hulk, Thor, Black Knight, and Dr. Druid, where Dr. Druid and the woman who wasn't actually Nebula were lost in the time bubble. She-Hulk then left after having her mind manipulated, and Thor and Black Knight departed for Asgard, meaning there were no more Avengers. Well, that was not the end for Dr. Druid. He returned in Avengers Spotlight 37, where he and the not Nebula escaped the time bubble, and in the process he learned that the reason his origin was similar to Doctor Strange's was that the Ancient One was performing a sort of trial run to ensure that when Stephen Strange would arrive, he could be raised to become Sorcerer Supreme. This action unlocked Dr. Druid's innate Celtic magics. With the truth known, Dr. Druid confronts his one-time lover as she is doing villainy, and through some complications winds up split in 3 as a younger version of himself and an older version of himself too. And after the battle, he retains the physical body of the younger version of himself, creating a healthy and hale Dr. Druid, who then assisted in the protection of the Earth in the pages of Quasar during that mess with Wildbagger the Infinitely Prolonged. So as someone that he has that connection with, Doctor Strange is able to use Dr. Druid as an anchor to return to the time and place that he's needed for the battle against Thanos. The anticipation of the battle continues in our next tie-ins over in Silver Surfer again. Issue 55 begins with the Surfer alongside Warlock a light year away, but watching with his acute vision. It only prompts him to want to act now, but Warlock tells him to wait and meditate in anticipation. When the moment comes, the two streak in only to see all the heroes annihilated, the Hulk the last one left being held up by Thanos by his throat, until he is dropped to the ground as dead as all the rest. Thanos gloats at their defeat. Warlock realizes that his foolish plan was doomed from the start, and Thanos takes up the one who had once turned him to stone, and now returns the favor. This leaves only the Silver Surfer himself, the one who was foretold to be the only one who might stand in Thanos' way. Except with the power of the Infinity Gauntlet, there is no chance. Mistress Death has herself taken on a Princess Leia look, adopting the forms seen in the original Thanos war involving the Cosmic Cube. He wants the Silver Surfer to be his scribe, writing of his rise to godhood. When Mephisto questions the wisdom of that, compounded with the fact that the Surfer is his most hated enemy, Thanos strangles him over the temerity. Still, Thanos takes away the power cosmic to ensure the Surfer can't pull anything, and then creates a capital world with a population of 1 billion to have as the center of his universe. On this world is a temple, where crowds are shoved inside to be killed in glorious sacrifice to Thanos' love for Mistress Death. Well, I say a temple, but there are, in fact, 1,000 such temples on this world. And of course, more on all the other worlds. This is Thanos' views of the universe. Life exists for no other purpose than that it might be snuffed out. That continues in issue 56. If you're wondering by now why there are so many issues that are tying in Silver Surfer, we're only at issue number 3 of Infinity Gauntlet, yet are on our 6th Silver Surfer tie-in. Well, that's because at this time, Marvel was experimenting with having some of the series release 6 books over the summer months instead of 3, as sales were higher at that time. This was originally experimented with on Amazing Spider-Man and the Uncanny X-Men in 1989, and worked so well that starting in 1990, it was done with more books over the following summers. Mark Gruenwald's Captain America had it for the next 3 summers, in fact. Streets of Poison in 1990, about a drug war on the city streets. Simple enough. The following year then was Superior Stratagem, involving a cabal of female-dominating villains called the Femizons, which included an issue where Cap was put into a tank and subjected to massive estrogen in an attempt to change him into a woman, and required him to later pass himself off as a woman to sneak into their base. If you think that can't get any weirder, the next year's storyline involved him, wait for it, becoming a werewolf. I told you it would come back. So obviously, in the summer of 1990, when Infinity Gauntlet came out and Silver Surfer was set to twice-a-month releases, those releases were dedicated to Infinity Gauntlet tie-ins. I mean, they had to be. That was the huge event taking place. It was a major thing for the Silver Surfer personally. That storyline was birthed in his pages, after all. However, as you might have noticed, issues 51 to 53 aren't about the Silver Surfer and current events. That's because the crux of it is that it's about the Silver Surfer and Thanos. At this time, Thanos was the Silver Surfer's personal enemy. Again, the Surfer was the only one who might interfere with Thanos' mission. So seeing as how this is the culmination of the storyline in his pages, of how in a sense it's his failure that has allowed Thanos' elevation to godhood, the true issues about their conflict, 54 through 59, are about how this is something personal for the Silver Surfer. But because that comes to fruition further into the Infinity Gauntlet series, it meant that Ron Mars had to put it in some ancillary material so that the Silver Surfer wouldn't be running ahead of where Infinity Gauntlet was, a problem that occurred over on the Incredible Hulk, which we'll see next time. In issue 56, the Surfer naturally chafes as the scribe to a mad, amoral god, forced to transcribe Thanos' conquest of the Kree almost instantly, the Skrulls after a full 2 hours, and the Shi'ar Empire as an afterthought once he'd bested their Imperial Guard. His temples are everywhere. He has even transformed the Statue of Liberty into one and changed her face to match his own. The Surfer's protests result in him being browbeaten by Thanos' manipulations of his very being, until the Surfer sees a moment where he can slip away and toss himself off a cliff, knowing that without his power cosmic, he will perish. Of course, Thanos can bring him back from Death's realm and restores his cosmic power so that he can't do this again, but the Surfer was counting on that move, and uses his restored power to attack. How it will end is unknown, because these are all actually just the fearful meditations of the Silver Surfer as he awaits the moment, a reminder of the stakes should he fail once again. With that, we'll return to the core book, Infinity Gauntlet number 4, which opens with the attack underway. And as foretold in Doctor Strange, Thanos freezes time for the attackers and notes not just them, but Warlock and the Silver Surfer are light year away. He's prepared to simply blink them all from existence, but Mephisto steps in. He advises that the way to win Mistress Death's heart might be a demonstration of courage in the face of possible defeat. So he should allow this attack to continue, with one hand metaphorically tied behind his back. Thanos, despite seemingly having cast aside his love for Mistress Death with the creation of Taraxia, seizes upon this idea, and decides to continue the battle using only the power of the gems without the knowledge that they offer. Eros notes that this is Mephisto manipulating Thanos into this course, but not sure what the devil hopes to get out of it. Either way, it gives the heroes a tiny chance as Thanos restarts the battle with a snap of his fingers. He avoids the initial attack, of course, but is caught out by the Hulk and Drax, only for the Hulk to be shrunk to a tiny size and nearly squished before escaping. The battle continues with heroes falling, thanks to Dr. Doom, who, as Thor's hammer blow knocks down Thanos, lust for power compels Doom to try to take the Gauntlet, which then blocks Thor's follow-up attack. When he finally does get the chance to deliver the blow, Thanos sends the hammer through a portal, a problem as without the hammer, Thor turns back to his mortal form, which in this case is Eric Masterson, and thus not protected by Doctor Strange's spell to survive in space. During the fight, Taraxia joins in, taking down Iron Man and Spider-Man. Drax and Firelord are thrown back into a prehistoric past. Mjolnir returns to Eric in time to change back, only for the Thunder God to be turned to glass. In an interesting moment, Thanos and Quasar speak as if they'd never met before, but Thanos destroys the quantum bands, prompting a not again out of Quasar after having lost his bands and his hands in that story arc. In the end, all that's left is Captain America, who stands his ground while Thanos comes over to finish him off. It's this moment that Warlock has been waiting for, and he sends the Surfer in, with the hope being that if Thanos allowed himself to drop his attention, he would forget the threat the pair so far away poses to him, and the Surfer could swoop in and take away the Infinity Gauntlet. And misses. It was a reasonable groping for a chance. Remember what Vision said, the only way to beat Thanos is if Thanos hands you an opening. And he had. They just failed to exploit it. Well, that leaves the backup plan, which is a collection of cosmic beings who in the final pages arrive to take this battle to the next level, while the mere mortals wonder how they can rally from here, or if this conflict will wind up destroying the very universe that is being fought over. We'll find out in our next part of From Here to Infinity.